Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Warrant Committee meeting. To make sure that we do have a quorum, Lynn, would you please take the roll?
Sure. From the Warrant Committee, we have Dave, Erin, Christine, John, Stephen, Scott, JJ, Kristen, Emily, and George. Thank
Very
you.
good. Terrific. Thank you all for joining us. We have a few guests tonight. We have one more warrant article to talk about, and that is the one we've been waiting for, which is the budget revision from last year's annual meeting. And we will have Mike Zulis and a few members, I guess, of the school committee here. If we can keep the presentations concise, that would be very helpful. As usual, we'll limit you to 7 minutes. And if you have not been put on the agenda, you can ask the chair for time to speak. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to get it because we have put in a great deal of time, and I think it's only fair that we observe our rules. That having been said, the chair would like to acknowledge an email that he got from Philip Johanning, who emailed me following our last meeting and took exception to some comments that some of our members made concerning his outstanding open meeting complaint. In response to this communication, I do want to reaffirm the commitment of the Warrant Committee to respond to all complaints, his complaint particularly in this case, and any legitimate complaints professionally and according to the requirements of the laws of the Commonwealth, as we are now doing. No offense was intended to anyone, to him or other individual involved in any way, and if any offense was taken for any reason, I apologize on behalf of the membership of the committee. So that having been said, I would further underscore our comments are usually extraordinarily civil and respectful one of another, and I would expect that to continue. We're all people, we all have opinions, we all have emotions, but I know that we are good at controlling those emotions and not letting them get the best of us. So with that, we can begin our meeting. Our minutes are in draft form still. We still have some additions to be incorporated, so we will not vote on them this evening, but you have received, I believe, the electronic version of the draft, and those will be forthcoming at our next meeting. And I think that will be sufficient for our purposes. The next item on the agenda is the Article 5, I believe, which is the budget revision and the request that will come through to the town meeting from the select board. We have Mike Zulis. Mike, is this good for you to be able to, are you ready for us to hear what you have to say?
As ready as I'll ever be.
What a guy. Now, as you have, you sent, I'm guessing everybody got the email outlining precisely what's being requested at this point.
Yeah,
the Warrant Committee should have received the information. So I'm assuming that everybody has at least become familiar with what is being requested. So if you and I'm imagining one of the members of the school committee will have something to say about it, that's great. And we'll just hold our questions until you're finished. So you have the floor.
Thank you, George, and thank you, everyone. And I will be brief. And I've been asked by the chair of the select board, Chair Conlon, to brief the Warrant Committee on what the Finance Committee of the select board is recommending. The Finance Committee met at 7 a.m. on Friday with many members of the school administration, the town administrator, town finance director, and superintendent, assistant superintendent for business, and has voted a recommendation. That recommendation will be recommended to the select board on Wednesday evening. So what you're hearing is what will be recommended to the select board and what the two members of the finance committee, which is myself and Arthur Doyle, are recommending to the select board. So at the meeting on Friday, as I said, was attended by town administrator, town finance director, and the superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent for business, and members of the school committee, Betty White, Ada Rosemarin, Beverly Rosteni, Lizzie Carroll, and Elaine Craighead. At that meeting, the school, and just to step back, the amount of new growth that we have to allocate is $225,000 of new growth less the $47,584 shortfall that Milton had in local aid in the final state budget. So that leaves us with a new growth number of $177,416,000 to allocate, and this is for the operating budget, to be considered for the operating budget. At least that's what the Finance Committee is recommending it for. The school department recommended 2 new school positions as part of that allocation, a 504, section 504 coordinator, and they can go into, school department can go and describe this better than I can. Section 504 coordinator, I understand, has to do with the district's compliance with prohibiting disability discrimination. And secondly, a speech language pathologist. The total half-year cost for those positions, including insurance, is $89,896 because those positions won't be filled until halfway through the year. Similarly, the town administrator recommended 2 police officer positions as part of that allocation, and the cost for that with insurance is $72,000. Let me step back for just a second and say that we have taken a worst case, most expensive case scenario with respect to the insurance and assume that each of those positions would choose the family health insurance benefit, which is the most costly. This is the most conservative. In the future, after some discussion on Friday morning, in the future, we may try to drill down on a better estimate for what town employees are opting for. But at this stage, we thought it was best to go for the most conservative view of what the insurance cost could be. After those 4 positions for the half year, that left an additional amount of $15,430. As you have seen, the town administrator and select board received several additional requests from town departments, the cemetery, planning department, fire department, building inspector, for additional amounts for this allocation. But the recommendation from the Finance Committee of the Select Board was to adopt those 2 recommendations from the school department, the 2 recommendations from the town administrator, and to use that $15,430 in addition to supplement what was a $33,000 shortfall in the library books and materials budget from town meeting. And let me just add one more thing, and that is to make clear that the funding that we have based these appropriations on is for half-year funding, because that is when the positions will come into effect for half year. For the next fiscal year, presumably they would be requested as full-year positions. And so we will have to come up with additional revenue whether it be from new growth or from the 2.5% increase in property taxes or new revenue sources, new revenue to fund those positions on an operating basis for the full year. But it was the judgment of the finance subcommittee that we should fund these positions for the half year for fiscal 22, and then use the overage for the library material, books and material shortfall. So I went a little longer, as I usually do, than I should have, but that's what I have, George.
Mike, you still came within the 7 minutes, so as usual, concise to the point, and tell your boss you deserve a raise. I think most of us who were sitting on the warrant committee for the deliberations of the last fiscal year, certainly last year, understand that there were positions that had to be eliminated, the police positions particularly, and the cut in the library funding. And there was obviously a great deal of discussion at this meeting and certainly within town meeting about that. Understanding that we would restore the library funding, certainly if that were possible, and the positions in public safety, the two police positions, I think is kind of intuitive given how we kind of had our conversations about this and where we left it, and knowing how it was really, I don't want to say contentious, but how spirited the discussion was with respect to those positions. I had looked through my notes and I don't recall a disability discrimination counselor being brought up. I know there were other positions that we talked about for the school committee, for the school department, but I'm interested in what the other members of the warrant committee have to say before we hear from the school committee about the police and the library positions. Are there questions? Christine, please.
Just a clarifying question. So the 15,000 for the library is essentially half of what they need to meet that state threshold and plus a little. Okay, so then we would look for the additional 18 next year, or I'm sure we'd fund the whole thing, right?
So, yeah, so I think the library director was looking for other ways to try to fill in the $33,000 shortfall. And so I don't know what the plan is to fill in the additional approximately $18,000. But I think this certainly goes a long way. The $15,430 certainly goes a long way to closing that gap.
Other questions? Okay. Do we have comments coming from the school committee with respect to these two positions? Mr. Jett, Superintendent.
Yes, excuse me for not having my camera on, just a lot going on.
All right. Not a problem.
I do agree that these weren't the final, excuse me, they weren't the final ask on the budget. It went forward. However, they were on our tier 2 or tier 3 ask at the warrant committee last December that never made it. And what happened is, because now we're back in session and we're looking at what's going on in the schools, they become a priority because, as Mike alluded to, the 504 is a contractual service to keep us in compliance with the state and the federal government. So because of the interruption in the learning, you have more parents asking for their students to be evaluated. We have more students who probably experience some regression. That's why we prioritize the 504 coordinator in the speech and language pathologist to provide those services.
Is that function continuing now? I mean, who's doing it and how is it being handled?
Very good. We're trying to, we have a psychologist, a speech and language that are trying to do it. We're already in the hole, somewhat out of compliance for compensatory services, trying to make up for some of those services and evaluation. We're obligated to do it one way or the other. We did do some of that over the summer in contracted services, and sometimes the contracts contracted services are probably more expensive on an ongoing basis when you outsource to various different organizations or companies.
I see. Questions from the floor? I mean, is this, Kristen, please.
Thank you. What did the positions that were approved last year ever get hired into? I think there was questions about a math coordinator. Did those positions ever get filled? And if not, just where that money went that was approved last year at special town meeting?
So in December 7th, 6 positions were approved. 3 out of the 6 were filled. The town, that was the money that was taken back because we didn't fill 3 of them with a body per se. However, I think I've communicated that several times. We had Ben Kelly at the high school, who was a vice principal that taught a science class. We had Eric Kara Yifru, who taught an extra science class. Amy Tom taught an extra science class. The reason why we were able to get away with the Spanish and not have large class sizes, if folks remember, from September 16th to April 8th, we were in a hybrid model where half of the kids were in the building and half weren't. But now that we're fully in the building, those class sizes are pretty significant in terms of 28, 29. So because we didn't fill them, because if you remember when we got them December 7th, around that time, we advertised for 2 weeks, and then you hit January, we had cases in the state about 6,000, 7,000 a day, and it was hard to get people to come in at that time. And quite frankly, that's why we were asking if we could keep those positions in the spring, advertise for them early so we could catch people at the start of the year. So that money went back to the money, and along with the benefits went back to the town.
Scott, you had your hand up. It's not anymore. Has your question been answered? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Good evening.
There you go.
I just have a procedural question. Mr. Jett just said that the money went back to the money. And that's part of it. And he also said, I believe, that the positions that weren't filled, the money got taken back. So I don't understand the procedure from money being taken back into the budget. There were 3 positions that weren't filled in December, and I believe he said that a few minutes ago that the money was taken back or went back to the town or something. Has that happened? Is that how that? I'm just looking about a procedure on that.
So if I could clarify my statements.
Thank you.
Not last year, but the year before, we were awarded the 6 positions. But because COVID hit in March 13th, that was put in abeyance until people found out what happened. Then it was restored December 7th, and the town warrant committee said, yep, you could do it. We had the 6 positions. We advertised for all 6 of them. We were able to fill with new bodies 3 of those positions. However, 3 of them weren't filled. And then when the town started talking about making cuts, those were 3 of the cuts that the town took back because you didn't physically fill them with a new body. Those were the ones that were taken back as part of the town-wide cut. However, what I was trying to say is that we did fill them with some people, and we were able to make do just because of the hybrid model. Now, technically, I didn't get any money, or the district didn't get any money. It was just never filled.
Okay, but how would we cut the money? When did we cut the money? I'm just trying to get that clarified.
I guess that would be a town side question because we never got the positions in. I think if someone could speak up from the warrant committee, I think that was what it.
Mike, do you have an answer for that? Because this is not our purview.
Yeah, no, sure.
Position filled.
So those positions from last December, they were appropriated by special town meeting in December for FY21. When the FY22 budget was considered last May for this fiscal year, those positions that were not filled, similar to the police department positions were not filled, that weren't filled, were not funded for FY22. So it's not like the money came back. It's just that those positions weren't funded for FY22 either in the police department. Those had not been filled. Those weren't funded, and that's happened for several years. And in the school department, same thing. They weren't funded for FY22. They had been funded for the half year for FY21. I think that's my understanding of it.
I think it's a question of terminology. I mean, to say that the money was taken back, I don't understand what that means. But I do understand when a position isn't funded, there is no appropriation for it, and there's no cash spent on it. And that's how I would describe what happened.
So I apologize on the wordsmith, and I'm just
That's
saying.
all right. You're a superintendent. You're not a finance person, clearly.
So,
We don't expect you to be. That's why
So
you're
the
getting
math-
into there.
so the math tutors were not requested in the May 21 town meeting budget. Is that correct? Is that what actually happened? So that's why we didn't fund them at that point?
Amy, do you want to answer that?
So Milton Public Schools requested the funding for all of those positions, but through the deliberations of this warrant committee, town meeting, they were budget reductions. The budget was cut. We went to town meeting without those in it, against Milton Public Schools' desire or request. So it was through all the meetings with this body as well as town meeting.
Yeah, because I think what we voted on was the recommendation of the select board is what we voted on. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Which
Right, so we didn't really deliberate it, did we?
Well, we did deliberate. We talked about it. I am going to put an end to this part of the conversation, going down a rabbit hole. We're talking about two positions. We're talking about two positions that are being requested right now. As far as, and the reason I think that you're getting some of this inquiry, Superintendent, is that many of us who were on the warrant committee before realized that there had been a focus on student-facing positions in the last round of budget discussions. Now, one of these positions clearly is student-facing, the other is not. And so I think that what you're hearing from some of the membership is, and I think you've explained it already, that we're not in compliance and we're at the risk of, not being in compliance has its own ramifications and potential issues that I think you want to avoid, if I'm guessing where you're going here. So I see lots of hands up. So let's see, I think, Scott, are you done?
Well, I actually wanted to speak directly to the issue, and then I got sidetracked when I listened to what Mr. Jett had said. These two new positions that we're talking about, I believe it was also said that because of COVID, there's more students that need to be tested. So is it possible to hire these people, the people that are concerned with the testing, since we are hopeful that COVID is not going to become an ongoing issue? Do they have to be permanent positions, or do we have to hire them as permanent positions and then double the pay, double the budget amount next year, even though it's only half year this year, because we'll get caught up on the testing? Are they going to be necessary after that? It's a question.
So sometimes
You understand the question?
Yes, I do. Sometimes if a student is identified for special services, it's not that they're identified for special services for a month or two. Sometimes they could be identified for the services or needs long-term down the road. And so you're right, I don't know, but one of the other things, Mr. Johnson, that we were talking about our enrollment, and I did a presentation on this, we anticipated a spike in our enrollment. Our enrollment has gone up significantly from last year. We're looking at an enrollment of close to 188 more students that are now in the Milton Public Schools that weren't in the Milton Public Schools at this time. Some of that is folks who went out during the pandemic coming back, and some of those are move-ins. And so I can't tell you or predict how many move-ins that we might get who might need services or 504 services or things like that. I don't know that. That's very hard to predict. But I don't look at this as a one-off. And to your point, I just think it's exaggerated by the 19-month pandemic. Keep in mind, this is the third year in a row that we're impacted by the pandemic.
Dave, you had your, Scott, have you had your question?
So are we hiring these as permanent positions, or is it possible to hire them as a temporary position and to see what happens, what pans out?
I
Are
think,
they permanent positions or are they?
yes, they are permanent positions. The speech and language pathologists, again, I think if, you know, I wish I had all of these exact numbers in front of me right now to recite to you, but the speech and language pathologists, we have a couple that service the entire district, which is about 4,400 and almost 20 students that they could potentially, not every day, but if a student needs services or evaluation or things like that, that person could be servicing those students, which right now I believe is closely up to about 800 and something students on the IEP.
But I'm guessing it's, to answer the question directly, it would be a permanent position. You'd be seeking funding for it for a full year following for the fiscal year of 23.
And I believe,
Okay.
Mike Zulis mentioned that as well.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to confirm it because I think that's what Scott was getting at. We have got to move this along. Scott, are you done?
I am.
Thank you. Dave, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jett, for your presentation, and thank you to all members of the school committee for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come to the warrant committee. We've got a number for two positions at 89,000. Could you please give us a breakdown by position of what the ask is for by position, please, if you have that?
By these two positions of the full year, we use a roundabout number of 68,100. Now that could vary depending on the person who we hire, their level of experience and this and that, but that is a plug number 68,1. If you divide that in half, then it comes out to 68,1 for the two positions for the full year. And I believe Mike Zulis mentioned about we went on a higher level of the benefits package. The person one or two may not even take the benefit package at all, or they may take the individual benefit package versus the family. But I think being a little more conservative, I think the agreement was to go with the high. That was something that was agreed upon last Friday. So that's the breakdown of those two positions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Henny, you had your hand up. Oh, Henny, are you there? Or are you muted? You're muted. We'll come back to you. I saw Betty White's hand up. Betty,
Yep.
did you have something to add, please?
Well, I just wanted to add to the comments about the need for the speech therapist and the 504 coordinator, because I actually worked in special ed for years before I retired. And by law, a parent can request an educational evaluation for their child. And the district, all districts across Massachusetts have a very specific timeline in which they have to do the testing and they have to have the meeting with the parents to discuss the child's needs. So the testing is often an educational person to do academic testing, a school psychologist who will do the testing to discover how the child learns, a speech and language pathologist who does testing on vocabulary and reading, etc. And usually a family meeting is done by someone like myself, an adjustment counselor. So it's a very intense testing protocol that we have to follow, and a meeting, and we have 45 days in which to do it. And remember, last year when kids were home learning remotely, a lot of parents were able to see that their child was really struggling and noticing the learning issues. And so not just Milton, but every district across the country probably has seen a significant increase in requests for testing. And a 504 coordinator, even though they may not have direct student involvement, they do a lot of work with parents and with the teaching staff, and they have to have a yearly meeting. A 504 is often a child who has a medical issue that may need special attention from some of the staff, or may have a anxiety diagnosis or something like that gets counseling once a week to help them manage their anxiety and to learn strategies to deal with it and that kind of thing. So these needs are being echoed across the district and across all the districts.
Thank you. Chairman Eberhard from the school committee, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Chair Asher and the Warrant Committee for having us this evening. I hope that the year is going well for all of you. I just wanted to point out that the meeting that occurred last Friday was a joint meeting between the Finance Subcommittee of the School Committee and the Finance Subcommittee of the Select Board. It was also posted as a full school committee. Many of the school committee members attended except for myself, and they voted on and approved these two positions to move forward to the special town meeting. So these positions have the approval of the full school committee. They will be discussed at our upcoming meeting on Wednesday evening. But I just wanted to point that out to you, that that's how the budget process works for the school committee, that the positions need to be approved by the full school committee first and foremost. And then for fiscal year 23, there will be many opportunities for the community to discuss the budget. There will be site council presentations, there will be a budget hearing, there will be a presentation to the warrant committee, and then finally to town meeting. So to answer Mr. Johnson's question, there will be many opportunities to look at the budget and consider what the needs will be for fiscal year 23 as we move forward.
Thank you. Scott, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, okay, I don't have a I'm basically, I understand the need for these two positions now, especially with the increase in the amount of children that need to be tested. What I'm saying, but where I'm looking at it, since we don't know for a fact if there's going to be a need for these people full-time in the future, is it possible that we could not hire them as a permanent basis initially and see if in fact the demand is there? And what is the criteria for the demand? That's the other thing. So that's where that's the only question I have.
I think the superintendent, Superintendent Jett, I mean, what is the protocol here? I mean, when you hire someone for positions of these sorts, are they hired for an annual contract, or do they become eligible for tenure at some point? How does it work? So there you are.
Quickly,
there you are.
I'm trying to get myself off of here.
There you go.
Very quickly, they're hired for a full-time position because this is a position that you need. Sometimes they do prevention work. Sometimes they do remediation work. Sometimes they do the evaluation process. And I want to bring people back to the budget presentation that we presented last year. One of the positions on the 504 coordinator was on that tier 2 level that didn't even make the conversation. So this was a need last year as well. So I want to remind folks of that. And if we don't have it, what we're finding ourselves doing is going out and doing contractual services, which ends up over a period of time costing us more money than it would cost us for the position.
When I mean, to be in full compliance, what do we as a town, what do you as a school department have to do? I mean, do you have to represent that you have full-time people, or are you representing that you have the function done contractually? I mean, I understand that having a person in-house is often cheaper, but how have you managed to
be in full compliance? We have to meet this. We have to meet deadlines, support students that are found to have needs, do the evaluations upon parents' requests. So I can't guarantee we'll be in full compliance. If 2,000 people say we want evaluations, as you know, one person's not going to be able to do 2,000 evaluations.
Yeah, that's
an
tall
exaggeration, but I don't want to say it because someone could get sick. We could get an influx of kids that need it. The bottom line, as long as we're meeting our deadlines, as long as we're providing the service that we need, as long as we're providing the speech language pathologist services that they require, we will be in compliance. We are somewhat in compliance now, but we do have a backlog just because we've been short-staffed in that area and the demand has been high. So,
and I'm assuming that the backlog could have you cited
without question. Without question.
Yeah, and which I think we'd all want to avoid that sort of a thing. That's just more paperwork to deal with on top of just having to do the work as well. Scott, did that answer your question?
Just one other thing. Historically, how many students need this kind of help, and how many people do we presently have doing it? And in other words, there must surely be a ratio as to how many students need the help and how many people we have, that can handle it adequately to determine how many more people we need. You know, in other words, what's the history of it, the historical statistics?
So historically, if you look at our enrollment over the course of the last few years, Scott, has gone up significantly. I think the high school used to be well under 950. We're close to almost 1,200 students at the high school. The PS used to be high 800s, low 900s, almost close to 1,000. We all know that the elementary schools are busting out at the seams. So historically, it's hard to do it because the enrollment's going up, the demands are going high. And then also, when you say historically, for me, as a new superintendent, you're now talking about the third year that we're going into a pandemic. I can't give you those predictions. We're just now 9 days into the new academic year, and we're still going through the process of doing those pre-assessments, accelerating learning, trying to fill in the gaps where some students have. We had students that were fully remote that did exceptionally well in some cases, but some students struggled with it, just like we had students in the hybrid. Some did well, but some students struggled with it. And particularly at the elementary level, I don't think online learning, and I said that in many meetings, was the ideal situation when you're trying to teach first, second, and graders trying to learn to read and write and things like that. So we're still not going to feel the full breadth of this whole situation. So I don't have those, long story short, I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but I could tell you that our enrollment's gone up and our demand has gone up significantly. And that was even prior to the pandemic.
Good. I'm going to move. Ohani has come back to us and has wanted to ask a question for a while. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for losing you. I'm literally at the school for the open house in the stampede of humanity that is here. It is, you don't need to tell me about more people. I just got pushed around trying to get on and my wireless got cut off. So that is why I disconnected, because literally of the mass of people. So Superintendent Jett, I can attest to what you're saying. There are way too many people here. It's not making me happy. In fact, I was trying to get up this meeting.
We're going to give you an A for effort for this tonight. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So my point was I wanted to speak to what, before I get cut off, I wanted to speak to what Assistant Superintendent Dexter said. As one of the people in the school committee budget review last year, we did see this position, at least one of them, and a second position that was like one, and we did ask them to really focus and curtail some of them to make sure that they didn't come in with too big an ask. So as one of those people in the room, I want to make sure that all the new folks know this was an ask. We pushed back on them early, and the school committee did respond by moving things down to B and C list and cutting them. Secondly, as we said, the rise in enrollment we all know about and the challenges are. My ask, Superintendent Jett, is the same ask we had last year, that as we come to the new budget, we would consider some of these things as if we don't longer need this position, that we think about how we repurpose them. So we want to see tracking from what has happened last year to this year in terms of the positions you got, so that if we come back and ask the same thing again, we're going to say, well, what happened to the last one? I just want to see the building of a strategic plan along with that. But I want to support these positions because I know that I asked you to cut them and push back on them last year. I want to be fair, and let's start with the right level. Christine and I were in there, and I know Brian is no longer here, but I want to make sure we have the facts.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Mike Zulus, you had want to make a comment?
Just one sentence, and that is, if I didn't make it clear, these two positions have the full support of the Select Board's Finance Committee, and we view this as really a consensus of the Select Board Finance Committee and the School Committee Subcommittee on Finance.
Okay. Chair Eberhard, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Asher. I just wanted to address Mr. Johnson's comments that, at the Joint Finance Subcommittee meeting, Director Maselli did present quite extensively about the needs of the district about special education. And we were not aware, or at least I was not aware, that we were coming to this meeting tonight to ask Susan Maselli to give us some more information to provide for you. They're excellent questions that he's asking about numbers and the way that it all falls out. And I can absolutely get that information from Director Maselli and present it to you, send it in an email or in a PowerPoint and provide you with that information so that you have it. Because it's relative.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just didn't
very
realize. I
helpful.
apologize. We did not know. And she did an excellent presentation. I was not there, but Member White and Member Craig had told me what a great presentation she did to really explain the need and how it
Yeah.
looks numbers and grade wise. And so I'm happy to reach out to her and present that information to the Warrant Committee.
I'm sure that would be very helpful. We'd appreciate it. I just want, for the good of the order, that the Warrant Committee looks at the entire town's budget, not just the school budget, and we have many constituencies to consider. And it's not that any of us thinks that the school department and the students particularly are not deserving. The question is, the pie is only so big. And we have a lot of people who want pieces of it, and sometimes bigger pieces than we can serve at any one point in time. So it's not a question of the Warrant Committee being unwilling or unable to understand. It's a question of trying to adjudicate and to think as the town meeting would think, because ostensibly that's what we do, to balance and to try and prioritize as much as we can based upon everybody's request and everybody's need. Because, I mean, when have you ever found anybody whose issue wasn't the most important thing in the world to them? I mean, it's just human nature, right? I mean, it's the way it is. And, you know, we really don't want to have the risk of, you know, having, you know, a sandbox with 3 4-year-olds in it and, you know, 1 shovel and, you know, 1 pail and 2 shovels. You know what happens then. And in order for us to have I guess the sagacity that's required to have Solomon's wisdom here and empower everybody to do what they need to do with a finite number of resources, having this information would be extremely helpful, because, you know, the members of the Warrant Committee do think in terms of, okay, if we do it here for the school department, we might not be able to do it for the library or for the police or the fire. And I don't have to tell you, we all live in town. The needs are ongoing. So we really appreciate the work that you all do. We know that the schools are budging at the seams. And we are extremely sensitive to what you have to do as a group. And you know, unfunded mandates and requirements of COVID, everything collides. And Mr. Jett, I think, gets to go to heaven with his clothes on for having been thrown in to this, you know, the deep end with COVID coming, et cetera. So we admire the work that you're all doing, and we are, you know, as supportive as we can be. Just we don't want you to think that we're giving you a hard time.
No, and I think the Warrant Committee would often come to Finance Subcommittee and speak to the Finance Subcommittee in more detail about the budget. And I know now with technology being so accessible to many, we can make sure that happens again. We want people to feel that they understand the budget, particularly the Warrant Committee and the entire town community and town meeting members, so that people feel like they're making an informed decision. That's very important to us.
No, we appreciate that. And look, we all live in town. We're all doing things as volunteers for the good of the order here. Scott, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, and I want to sort of second what you're saying in that nobody wants to see the school succeed more than I want to see them succeed. A little bit of background is I do efficiency and streamlining for a living. And I'm interested in the metrics of how everything in the school budget comes about. Because every time you do that analysis over and over, no matter what kind of company you're involved in, things get more efficient and things get more streamlined. And you find out, especially in the private sector, that you can get a lot more done with a lot less. And your budget is by far the largest budget in the town. So we'd like to help as opposed to be seen as a hindrance to you achieving your goals. And the goal, as I've stated publicly, is I want to see Milton be one of the top 10 schools in the state. And I think that all of us want that for the kids. We want to see kids get competent life skills so they can succeed. And that makes everybody better off in a diverse way. And so that's the purpose of the questions, is I want to see, I think all of us would like to see metrics and work collaboratively as opposed to adversarially. And unfortunately, that when you start asking quantitative questions of people and put them on the spot, they it can appear to you as you have to defend yourself. I just want to hear what the logic is, between what's going on. And that's totally my agenda. And I thank you for coming.
Thank you. Now I have a question for Mike Zulus. That the select board a question. The select board has not met to confirm these numbers yet officially to recommend them to us through the town meeting, have they, or no?
No, our meeting is Wednesday night.
When it's like 2 days from now. Okay. So we have a procedural issue. I think it would be virtually impossible for us to take a vote on this tonight without that vote from the select board, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, George, you're an independent body. You don't need, I mean, it's nice. I would prefer you have the select board's recommendation and thought on it. But I have to say, I think as a procedural matter, you're an independent body and you can do it before, during, after, and you can do whatever you want, or you can go a different way. So I don't think the select board's recommendation is a precondition to your voting. But you do have the finance committee's recommendation, and that's 2 of the 5. So
if that's the case, I would be hard pressed to second guess the select board's finance committee and the school committee's finance committee based upon these allocation recommendations. And if these are the numbers, perhaps we can work with them. Erin, do you have a comment or a question? You have your hand up.
Yep, I have a quick question for Mr. Zulus. When we received the recommendation earlier today at, I don't know, mid-afternoon today, attached to it was a document that the town administrator sent out asking for requests from the departments of the town. And in those requests was the fire department, the cemetery, the library, which thank you guys for helping to fund them. But there was no request from the police department included in that at all.
Well,
and so my question is, why is it that we are choosing to not see that request from the police chief? And I believe he needs these folks, but I'm just curious as to why there was no official request that we received. And if there was, how did the select board come to give them the money and not any of the other folks that we saw the request?
So I think there was something from Chief King before, and it just may not have been in that packet. So I know that Chief King has had discussions with the town administrator, and I think there was something in writing for him, but I'd have to find out. But
if there was, I don't think we did see it. I don't know that I don't know that we would see it in a matter of course anyway. But
that's why.
I think the rationale from the finance subcommittee was that these positions have been unfunded for, I would say, more than 3 years now.
Yeah, the request has been there for several years.
And I know the request has been made by the chief, whether it was in writing or to fund these that have been unfunded, whether it was in writing or whether it was verbal and then relayed to us by the town administrator. I just don't remember.
But the police, the public safety positions do have the support of the select board finance committee.
Yeah, we voted unanimously, the 2 of us. We voted what I presented to you this evening, the 89,986 for the school positions, including insurance, the 72,000 for the police insurance, which includes the insurance, again, for half a year for both. And then the balance, the 15,430 for the library. And Aaron, what I thought would be helpful was that you would see what we were looking at last Friday, which were all of those.
Yeah, and I absolutely know that Chief King has been here multiple times. I mean, I've been on this committee now for almost 5 years. I totally know that. Yep. I just thought it was weird that we got all these other ones and his wasn't in there. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it. I just thought it was weird.
His might have come in early, and that's kind of my oversight, just sending you what I had from Friday. So his might have come in early.
All right.
That's fine. And I do support it. I don't want the chair to think that I don't support the police or the fire department. That wasn't my intent in asking this question at all.
No, I understand. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, procedurally, we do ask these questions. So I will pose this to the warrant committee before we do take a vote. Are you as a group comfortable voting on this recommendation at this point? Now, procedurally, again, and operationally, we are under a deadline. We have to have the warrant to the printer next week. So if there's any change in what the select board comes up with, we would have to file an amendment through a digital green sheet, I'm guessing, or something, some equivalent. But at this point, if the warrant committee is comfortable, we can take a vote after if there's any more discussion on these items. We can certainly engage in that, but if the warrant committee is comfortable taking a vote, I will abide by the consensus. Does anybody have any objection to taking a vote? Let me put it that way. Now that we've been waiting for these numbers for quite a while, so we finally do have them, and the need has been demonstrated. So if I don't hear any objections, I think we can proceed to further discussion and then take a vote on this, as it's our last big item of business for the special town meeting. Okay, is there any other discussion? Anybody wants to bring up any further points about these positions and using the funding that we have for these positions, for the police positions and for the two positions of the school department? Okay, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation as presented.
Second.
We have to have a motion made, and then we can take the second, but we need the motion.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much, both of you. Lynn, can you take the roll? Is there any further discussion?
Mr.
Hearing
Chair?
none. Yes,
Mr.
yes.
Chair, this is O'Hanley's.
Oh, there you are. Yeah,
Just
go
one
ahead.
point. Mr. Chair Zulus, I just wanted to ask that I think I just faintly heard the comment that Member Bradley was making. I think in future, could we just make sure we have all the recommendations together, just so there's no question about anything? That would really help. If we can make sure we have all that on paper so we can keep our paper record, that would be great.
Sure thing. And if there's something out there, and I think there is, whether by email or memo, we'll forward that on. I'll ask Mike Dennehy to forward that on.
Yeah, we've been being slapped around for our minutes, so I want to make sure we're not taking any abuse over missing paper. You know,
That's true.
I think Mr. Chair will agree with me.
We know you do. We know you're doing your best.
If our clerk could be canonized, we would do that. We couldn't get along without her.
We are too.
Yeah, we understand. Okay, is there any further discussion? The chair, the motion has been made, seconded, and any other discussion? Hearing none. Esteemed clerk, please take the roll.
Dave,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
and George.
Yes, unanimous. Thank you all. And we,
Christine,
I
you
wasn't
get
called
our-
upon.
Yep, there you go. You missed him.
oh,
My apologies. Muhammad?
Yes.
Mohammed, we're sorry. Apologies. Okay.
No
well,
worries.
It is unanimous. That's very good. We like this. It makes presenting to the town meeting that much more direct. Members of the school committee, Superintendent Jett, thank you very much. Amy Dexter, thank you very much for coming. We know you have an incredible amount of work. We hope the school year is off to a good start. And you have a few challenges, but we know you're up to meeting them.
I have to say, it's great to see my neighborhood fill up with cars as people are at the middle school tonight. So, well, Henny, I'm sorry that it's so crowded, but my neighborhood is full of everyone visiting the middle school, and it's fantastic.
Apologies accepted.
But listen, it's a high-class problem, so we'll take it. Thank you all very much. Mike Zulis, we appreciate your time. And if there are any changes to any of these, to this article particularly, we'll look forward to hearing from you or Katie Conlon at your earliest convenience, so we can modify what we have to do in order to be ready for the town meeting.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. So members of the Warrant Committee, we need a volunteer to draft this comment for Article 5. Is there anyone who's willing to do that? Now I can finish my letter now that we have this done. Is there any intrepid soul who wants to take this on?
Dave, you're already doing another one. Didn't you do another one?
I got it in.
I know, but who hasn't done one? I took 7.
Yes, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Erin.
Of course, Lynn, anything for you. All right, come on, somebody else. Who hasn't done one?
I'll be happy.
Oh, Henny, is that you who's volunteering?
My phone got cut off again. I just came back. I'll be happy to do it.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Lynn, when do we have to have these all in to you, by the way? Most of them are there, right?
Yes, most of them, all of them are there except for this one that we just voted on. No pressure, but we're having a review tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So if you can get it to me before tomorrow
Lynn,
at
I
1 o'clock.
understand. Don't worry. I'll boil a pot of coffee and get to it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Lynn, I just have a question on the Article 1 that I submitted. I have to make a little tweak to it. I heard back from Chase Berkeley about how much care they put into that piece of property. They plow the snow, but they don't do trash or clean up or anything. So I think I need to modify it because I said that the town took care of the property and they sort of take care of it, but not in its entirety. It's a combination of the yacht club and the condos association. So I need to just do a little tweak. I'll do that tonight, send it to you.
No worries. You still have time till tomorrow at 1. Thank you.
We already have, believe it or not, we already have received some edits for the draft that's already in place. So it's just a work in progress, and it continues until we absolutely finalize it and send it off to the printer.
Okay, thanks.
So thank you very much. Thank you all for participating. A couple of more things before we adjourn. In the event that there is any change in any of the articles, I think we should, just for safety's sake, schedule a meeting for next Monday night. We can cancel it if there is no need, but if the committee is agreeable, we can schedule a meeting for next Monday evening at 7 by Zoom once again, and we can tie up any loose ends if they need to be tied up. Otherwise, we can cancel it, and that would be fine. And then we can call our next meeting for probably 2 weeks before the special town meeting, and then we will be in session for the special town meeting. We'll convene by Zoom half an hour before the town meeting begins to handle anything that has come up between the publication of the warrant and the town meeting. Once again, as we discussed at our last meeting, you will need to have 2 devices going, one for our meeting as a warrant committee, and then one for your participation, our participation jointly with the town meeting. So if you do not have access to a second device, contact Lynn. We can arrange for you to have it and have access to everything that you need. Does anybody have any questions about that at this point? Otherwise, I think we're good. I think we're done. So thank you all very much once again for your public spiritedness and participation and your really great devotion to getting this job done. It seems thankless sometimes, and we are asked to do a lot of things that can be complicated and that will not always agree with some of our neighbors. And of course, we're all, two smart people can't agree on everything all the time. So this is the nature of the beast. But I think that our conversations, our questions, our attention to the details of these articles and what they represent for the town is really important, and I do think it's appreciated. So again, I thank you on behalf of the town and myself as well. So having said that, if there is no other new business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Kristen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Terrific, John. Lynn, we're not even gonna engage in discussion. Lynn, can you take the roll?
Dave,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Muhammad,
Yes.
George.
Yes,
That's
very
it.
good. Thank you all very much. Till next week, if necessary.